Have you ever wondered what drives a person to conquer the entire known world before the age of 30? This isn't the plot of a fantasy novel. It's the real-life story of Alexander the Great, a name that has echoed through history for over 2 millennia. How did a young king from a small kingdom in northern Greece become the master of an empire stretching from the Balkans to modern-day Pakistan? Join me as we unravel the epic saga of a brilliant military strategist, a visionary leader, and a man who forever changed the course of history. Born in 356 BCE in Pella, the capital of Macedon, Alexander was no ordinary prince. His father was King Philip II, a formidable military reformer who had turned Macedon into a dominant power in Greece. His mother was the fiery Olympias, a princess from Epirus. From a young age, Alexander's education was second to none. His tutor was none other than the great philosopher Aristotle. Imagine having one of history's greatest minds teaching you everything from politics and philosophy to medicine and biology. Aristotle instilled in the young prince a deep love for knowledge and a curiosity about the world, passions that would fuel his future expeditions. Even as a boy, Alexander's ambition was legendary. A famous story tells of how he tamed the wild stallion, Bucephalus, a horse no one else could ride. While others tried to use force, Alexander noticed the horse was afraid of its own shadow. He simply turned Bucephalus towards the sun, calmed him, and leaped onto his back. This wasn't just about taming a horse. It was a demonstration of his keen observation, intelligence, and courage. His father, Philip, reportedly wept with joy, declaring, "My son, you must find a kingdom equal to your ambition. Macedon is too small for you." That horse, Bucephalus, would carry him across thousands of miles of conquest. Tragedy struck in 336 BCE when King Philip II was assassinated. At just 20 years old, Alexander ascended to the throne. His father's sudden death plunged the kingdom into turmoil. Subject states rebelled, and rivals challenged his claim. But Alexander acted with lightning speed and ruthless efficiency. He marched south, swiftly quelling uprisings in Greece. When the city of Thebes revolted, he made a brutal example of it, razing the city to the ground, but sparing its temples and the house of the poet Pindar. The message was clear and terrifying. Loyalty would be rewarded, but defiance would be crushed. With Greece secured, Alexander turned his gaze eastward, to the colossal Persian Empire, his father's ultimate, unfinished ambition. In 334 BCE, with an army of around 40,000 highly trained Macedonian and Greek soldiers, Alexander crossed the Hellespont into Asia Minor. This was more than an invasion. It was a crusade, framed as revenge for the Persian invasions of Greece a century and a half earlier. His opponent was Darius III, the King of Kings, ruler of a vast and wealthy empire that dwarfed Alexander's kingdom. The odds seemed insurmountable. His first major test came at the Granicus River. The Persians held a strong defensive position on the opposite bank, against the advice of his seasoned generals, who suggested waiting until the next morning. Alexander ordered an immediate, audacious charge across the river and up the muddy banks. He led the charge himself, fighting in the thick of the battle, his plumed helmet making him an easy target. He nearly lost his life, but was saved at the last second. The result was a stunning victory that shattered Persian control over Asia Minor. The legend of Alexander the Invincible had begun. One of the most telling tales from this early campaign took place in the city of Gaudium. There, an ancient ox cart was tied to a post with an intricate, complex knot. A prophecy claimed that whoever could untie the Gordian knot would rule all of Asia. After struggling with it for a moment, Alexander stepped back, drew his sword, and sliced the knot in half. This was classic Alexander. Where others saw an unsolvable problem, he saw a simple, direct solution. It was a powerful symbol of his approach to conquest, cutting through old traditions and complexities with decisive action. The next pivotal confrontation was the Battle of Issus in 333 BCE. Darius III personally commanded a massive army, vastly outnumbering Alexander's forces. Using brilliant tactics, Alexander identified a weakness in the Persian line. He led his elite companion cavalry in a decisive charge straight at Darius himself. Seeing the fearless Macedonian king bearing down on him, Darius panicked and fled the battlefield, causing his entire army to collapse in chaos. It was a humiliating defeat for the Persians. Even more significantly, Alexander captured Darius's mother, wife, and children, but instead of treating them as prisoners, he showed them great respect and honor, a gesture of chivalry that enhanced his reputation. Rather than pursuing Darius immediately, Alexander made a strategic move to secure the Mediterranean coast and neutralize the powerful Persian navy. This led him to the island city of Tyre, a formidable fortress that seemed impregnable. For 7 long months, the Tyrians resisted from behind their massive walls. So, what did Alexander do? He ordered his engineers to build a causeway, a massive land bridge nearly a kilometer long, right across the sea to the island. It was an astonishing feat of engineering and sheer willpower. Once the causeway was complete, his siege towers could reach the walls, and the city fell. Alexander's siege of Tyre is still studied today as a masterclass in military engineering and relentless determination. From there, he marched into Egypt. The Egyptians, who resented Persian rule, welcomed him not as a conqueror, but as a liberator. They crowned him pharaoh and declared him a son of the god Amun. It was here, at the mouth of the Nile, that he founded the most famous of the many cities that would bear his name, Alexandria. He envisioned it as a great center of trade, culture, and learning, and it would soon become the intellectual capital of the ancient world. Home to the legendary Great Library, with the entire eastern Mediterranean under his control, Alexander was ready for the final showdown with Darius. In 331 BCE, on the plains of Gaugamela, near modern-day Iraq, the two armies met for the last time. Darius had gathered an enormous force, with scythe chariots and war elephants, determined to crush the Macedonians. Once again, Alexander's tactical genius shone through. He used an unorthodox formation to counter the chariots, and just as at Issus, he led a cavalry charge that broke the Persian lines and aimed directly for Darius. And once again, Darius fled. The battle was a resounding victory, effectively ending the Achaemenid Persian Empire. Alexander marched triumphantly into the legendary cities of Babylon and Susa, seizing unimaginable wealth. But Alexander wasn't done. His insatiable curiosity and ambition drove him further east, into lands the Greeks knew only through myth. He pushed through treacherous mountains and deserts, into what is now Afghanistan and Central Asia. His soldiers, exhausted and homesick after years of campaigning, grew restless. They had conquered the Persian Empire. What more was there to do? But Alexander dreamed of reaching the ends of the world and the great outer sea. He led his army across the Hindu Kush and into India. In 326 BCE, at the Battle of the Hydaspes River in modern-day Pakistan, he faced his most challenging opponent yet, King Porus and his army of war elephants. It was a terrifying and bloody battle. Alexander's forces had never faced elephants before, but his brilliant tactics once again won the day. He was so impressed by Porus's bravery that after capturing him, he not only returned his kingdom, but also gave him more territory, making him an ally. This battle, however, marked a turning point. Alexander's beloved horse, Bucephalus, died here, and his army, weary from 8 years of constant marching and fighting, finally put their foot down. At the Hyphasis River, they refused to go any further east. A frustrated and disappointed Alexander finally agreed to turn back. The return journey was a disaster. Alexander split his forces, leading one contingent through the brutal Gedrosian desert. Thousands died from heat and thirst. When he finally returned to Babylon in 323 BCE, he began planning new campaigns, an invasion of Arabia, and perhaps even further west. He was busy integrating his vast empire, encouraging marriage between his soldiers and local women, and blending Greek and Persian cultures in a policy known as Hellenization. But his plans were cut short. After a prolonged banquet, he fell ill with a fever and died 10 days later, at the age of just 32. His final words, when asked to whom he left his empire, were supposedly, "To the strongest." His death without a clear heir plunged his vast empire into 50 years of civil war. His generals, known as the Diadochi, or successors, carved up the empire for themselves, creating new Hellenistic kingdoms in Egypt, Syria, and Greece. Although his political empire fractured, Alexander's cultural legacy was immense. He had spread Greek language, ideas, and art across the known world, creating a new, blended Hellenistic civilization that would last for centuries and lay the groundwork for the Roman Empire. He was a military genius whose tactics are still studied, a visionary who founded over 20 cities, and a leader whose ambition knew no bounds. He was Alexander the Great, a man who, in just over a decade, redrew the map of the world and left an indelible mark on human history. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey through the life of one of history's most fascinating figures. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next historical adventure. See you next time.